So this is the Media Entrepreneurship Pro Seminar. It's a lecture series where the students are now taking over more and more control. They are presenting the speakers, recording the presentations, promoting the events, and doing all the social media. They created the logos, they created the screen, the large screen presentations, and they will continue to work on the website. And so this is becoming their lecture series. They're now going to start having students present 10-minute presentations before the lecture so we can hear what students are up to as well. And so here's Andrew to introduce Daniel Sabio.
Hey guys. This is Daniel Sabio. He graduated from Georgia Tech in 2011, and he is currently a VR musician and developer with The Glad Scientist. In the past, he was a community manager at Tech Square Labs, and he was also a production co-coordinator at Golden Seed Productions. Last month, he became an artist in residence at Zoo Labs. The month before that, he was named an Art Omni Music Fellow at the Art Omni International Arts Organization. He's also participated in the Oculus Launchpad experience, and he co-founded Phantasma VR, which is a communal virtual reality concert platform. Ladies and gentlemen, please put your hands together for Daniel Sabio.
Hey everybody, great to be with you virtually. I'm actually in Boston right now. I'm going to be a part of this IDEO Makeathon. It's all about design thinking and prototyping and stuff tomorrow, but normally I live in Berlin, so it's awesome to be here with you. Can you hear me all right?
Yeah. Yes.
Okay, cool. I'm gonna do some screen share and show you some ultra fancy slides now. Cool. Okay, can you see the slides? No. Okay. Can you see the slide now?
No.
Okay. We should test this.
I'm happy to.
You have to click the share screen button. Can you see it now?
Yes.
Yeah, cool. And now?
Yes.
Do you see it? Okay, perfect. Yeah, so this presentation, I named Blurring the Lines, and I really want to talk about presence and performance in VR. And I actually go by the name of Glad Scientist. It's my artist name. And then my real name is Daniel Eric Carlos Hector Alberto Sabio, which nobody wants to say over and over again. Yeah, permission is granted. Please interrupt me at any point. If you feel like you have a question, just like yell. I'm a really big fan of like people interrupting and it becoming more of a conversation or discussion than straight ahead talk. So yeah, a little bit about my background. Well, it's a long story, so I'll just give you the edited version. And yeah, so when I was about like 5 years old, I was playing Mario and Duck Hunt, and I decided, hey, I think I want to like make video games. Like whatever's happening here is super magical, and I want to figure out how to do that. And yeah, my mom was like, okay, whatever. And then like 10 years later, Mom, go to college, all that stuff, and I'm like, yeah, I want to make video games. So I was like, okay, well, where do you go from there? There's no like, okay, make video games degree. So I started looking around and found computer science was the thing to do. So I went to Georgia Tech to do that, and then realized that this computational media thing. And then I ended up studying abroad in Barcelona and met this guy. And this guy just changed my life. because in this old little warehouse shoddy space that you might be able to see in the corner there, he was teaching Pure Data, which is this node-based programming language where you can make music and make visuals directly through just kind of drag and drop different wires. And I made a VJ controller from a PlayStation controller, and I realized, like, whoa, like, you can make art with code. And when I realized that, it really created a lot of freedom. And I started to see everything around me as art, and I started to really connect the dots between, like, the technical side of my brain and the artistic side of my brain, and really understand that it's like all one. So yeah, Achieve and Unlock was just like crazy, really mind-blowing. Then for about 8 years, I went on a stint of doing all kinds of creative coding, doing like Blink-based beat machines, where people could just walk up to like webcams and then blink at them, and they would create parts of a drum machine. I started to VJ lots of different shows, started to do a lot of projection mapping, and then I even did some interactive like circuit stuff with like some Cirque du Soleil, but more like local level stuff in different places. And yeah, then I decided, yeah, like I'm tired of like traveling the world and making websites and doing this some of the time. Why don't I like go back to Atlanta, where like I have an art community and get my community on. And so with Dylan, who's in the top right, and a couple other friends, he actually went to Georgia State for music, and we started VLSC Records, which are doing lots of really interesting music events in the town now. And then the Art and Tech Meetup, which is a meetup for literally the intersection of art and tech. I think they're close to like 3,500 members now, and it's still ongoing, monthly meetup. And yeah, but I thought this was about VR though. So like, yeah, let's get into that part. Because I was sitting there and I was making all these immersive spaces, and I was doing all this projection mapping and going through all these crazy logistics and creating literally immersive environments that were supposed to be transformative to people. That was my goal. And I'd seen the Oculus Rift, like Kickstarter and all that stuff, and I was like, yeah, it's for gaming, you know, that'll be cool for gaming in a few years. And then it just hit me, and I was like, wait a second, VR is immersive art. What am I doing? So stayed up for a long time, got a Vive, and again, this sort of freedom happened. But somewhere along the line, when I got the Vive, I wondered, is there a way to make music in VR? And I found out that I already had Soundstage VR, which is a music making program in VR, and it was kind of this beautiful marriage of my background with music. So VR music, what's it all about? I'm giving you the version because I could talk about this like extensively. So VR music has two sides really. There's like a side that's more interested in VR as like an interface for producing music or performing music, mostly producing. And then there's also the side like, so up top, you have Lyra VR on the bottom, it's the Wave VR. The Wave VR is more so like an MMO. A lot of people go online with avatars, they attend different concerts. This picture is from Tokimonsta's concert. Glitch Mob has done some stuff with them. And they're doing really cool stuff on that side of things. Then there's more on the production side, which is ExaVR. Zach, who runs that, is based out of Michigan, and he's doing some really interesting stuff more on the classical side of it for like more like classically trained musicians. And then on the bottom here you have Electronauts VR, which is more so like a game of DJing. And then you have Soundstage, which is really what I kind of chose as my tool. And the reason why I chose it is because a lot of the things were a bit familiar to me. A lot of this, coming back to like the node-based aspect of it, you can kind of see in the bottom right, you're able to wire things together. And you're able to wire things from like a really low level of sound. So that was really comfortable for me. And then also another big thing was being able to integrate it with other performative tools. So it has MIDI out, and I'm able to send it to any other program and then change those messages into whatever I want, which leads me to really talking about the presence and the performance side of things. And the reason why I was so interested in performance and in kind of integrating all these different arts is because people kept trying to tell me what VR was. They were like, it's insular, only one person can do it at a time, it's hard to transport you. I mean, it's built to transport for you to somewhere else, make you do things that you've never done. And then people were telling me that there are standards for it, and I was like, come on, there's not even standards for film, and that's been around for like forever, it feels like. So you can't tell me that something that's as new as VR has a real rules already. So really I see VR and AR as tools, and I see XR as the future of our interaction with computing systems. I think in the next 10 years we'll all be using some kind of AR or VR interfaces to interact with computers, period. I don't think cell phones are really going to be a thing. And I think that, experimenting and seeing different ways that we can use these in different contexts is super useful. So yeah, there's a lot of freedom. Don't ever feel boxed in by the way that people are doing things, is really kind of my mentality on it. And so I started thinking about, okay, how do musicians currently perform? And you got this angry guy who's smashing his laptop because you go to an electronic music show, and sometimes it could be your favorite music that you listen to every day, and you go to a show and he's just sitting behind a laptop with like one controller with like 12 knobs on it, just like turning stuff, and you fight to get to the front of the crowd, and you're like, I should really just be where it sounds best in the crowd, because what he's doing isn't that interesting. And then on the other side, on the VR side of things, I really, really, really do appreciate what the Wave is doing, and I really respect Adam and their whole team. But I also feel like there's a magic, there's a ritual in being in the same room and people with the same interests, for whatever reason, coming and being in the same place at the same time. And so I think that using an interface which can share the process and the consciousness, so to speak, of performing in VR with a live audience who is there really kind of bridges the gap for me. So when I'm in VR, I'm able to see all of my instruments and do all of the live patching and live manipulation, and the audience is able to directly follow, exactly what I'm thinking. Even when I make mistakes, like they can see, oh yeah, the thing just like disappeared into the air. You get to have those kinds of connections in the process that you don't normally get. So there's this multi-reality layer to the presence, that I'm in a space physically with people, and then I'm also in this other reality. But then I'm also connecting these realities through, a backdrop of a screen behind me, sharing what I'm seeing. So you have this multi-reality presence happening, and then as I've built on these experiences, there's also the reality of my imagination, which I'll talk a little bit more about later. But yeah, bringing in, because you can send MIDI out of this system into VJ tools to then create live visuals that represent the feeling or the thought or the reality of these different musical pieces as they're being performed live, and sharing that as well. But also there's this vulnerability factor that I find really interesting, that like you have to be okay with making mistakes and really putting yourself out there and really saying, hey, like this is what I know. I know I'm not the best musician, in the world, in the city, and whatever, in my neighborhood. I'm going out here, I'm showing you exactly what I'm doing, and you take it or you leave it. And so that's really, really scary, but also really rewarding at the same time. And yeah, last year I definitely went really deep on the vulnerability, and I think the culmination of that exploration really was this piece called Meld. And this piece was made specifically for a AR VR event in Atlanta called Future X Live. And that event really it was really focused on AR, VR, and brain-machine interfaces, and the people who run the event, they work at this agency called Moxie, and they brought me into their office, their future lab, and we sat down and we talked about what they would want in a performance. And I said, well, why don't I, use the brain technology and the brainwave readers while I'm in VR, and let's see what happens, and let's let people be able to see that in real time. And they're like, okay, cool, let's try it, let's see what happens. And it ended up becoming probably one of the bigger projects I've ever worked on. It was also the first time I really used the 3D workflow. Because I had in the past with all the VJ tools, it ends up in a 2D flat screen. So that was always kind of the end medium. In this case, I actually used Unreal Engine and created an entire video game to where the brainwaves would be then isolated, and depending on the certain part of the piece would be focused in on different features. So it was really a commentary on our relationship with technology. So the present day would feel very separated. So the first section is called separation. And we're looking at our phones, and our phones are separate from us. We're looking at a laptop, it's separate from us. And we feel like we're being separated from our physical realities right now. And then we try to escape, or we try to find refuge. And that's the second part. So we go to nature. And when we're in nature, we feel good, but there's always this feeling like, okay, well, this is temporary. It's something else is coming. And then you have the union, where it's really that the technology becomes omnipresent and becomes a part of our nature, and it kind of harmonizes in that sense. So the different brainwaves were mapped for these different parts of it, specifically to represent that narrative. So in this image on the top, you can see the live brainwaves reading out in this little like anime thing that I made. And then all of the environment is being procedurally generated by the different brainwaves. And then that's during the escape/refuge scene. And then on the other screen, you can see the actual music that's being controlled at the same time. And then, yeah, it was really exploring like what does the brain do on VR and music, because already there have been studies that music kind of ignites a lot of different parts of the brain. So I was like, okay, well, what does VR do? The result is that, yeah, your brain really, really gets excited by being in VR, for sure. And a lot of those, like the gamma values, which are generally associated with like, okay, this is you being in the zone, brainwave, so to speak, go pretty wild in a positive way when you're in VR, which is pretty cool because it's a rare state of mind. And then on the bottom there is a beautiful render of the goddess who appears in the union portion, and then really I had to do a lot of training for this piece of my brainwaves so I could actually like control them and make a contiguous like performance. And in that section, I was sitting and meditating so that these different concentric circle rings with this language that we had created would like slowly rotate and align. The very calm brain. And yeah, gratitude is key, because this was the first time I actually worked with someone else on a performance, and Dylan Lane helped with a lot of those VFX. He created all the characters and a lot of the visual side so that I could focus on the interaction and performance. So major thank yous to him. And yeah, it's important to be grateful and to always like recognize people, because it's like gratitude just like creates more bubbles of like positivity in like all your circles and all, and it just like gives you more magic to do more stuff. Yeah, so performance for me is it's a sometimes joyous battle with the self to be as transparent as possible with your inner goo. And by inner goo, I mean like the abstract isness that is inside of you at that time. And really it's about like killing your ego and letting whatever is in you be transmitted as transparently as possible in that moment. Yeah, it's goo. Yeah, so more about like the presence, and people would always come up to me when I was playing a show, and or when I'm talking to people and I'm like, yeah, I'm a VR musician. Like, oh, so you make music for VR experiences? And then I have to explain to them, no, I actually like produce and perform music in VR and do this and this and that. So I was like, you know what? I should listen to what these people are asking me, and I should just learn spatial audio techniques, and I should also be able to do that. And then I can be like, yes, but I also do this. So that led me into spatial audio lands, and actually led me to Berlin, which is where I live now. And so spatial audio or sound for XR, I saw there wasn't a specific talk on this. I'm not sure if it was covered in any of the other lectures, but here are some like pretty good tools. Most of them are free. I'm not gonna like say them all right now, I don't think. Yeah, it's awesome to experiment with these tools. And yeah, if you want this slide or any of the presentation or whatever, like I can give you that. And you can just like have this as reference. But yeah, there's a tons of tools for like normal audio production, and then there's stuff for game engines, then there's stuff for multi-speaker array systems. So when I got to Berlin, that was in May, and I was in this class on ecoacoustics, and that was spatial audio sound design, more or less. And we were learning these different tools. That was on the last slide. And we were in this space called Mono. And this space, you can see these like tower-like structures in there. And it's a 37.9 channel system. So each one of those like circular parts on each one of those columns is a set of 4 speakers. And so what it does is it actually creates a spatial audio experience in the physical space that you're in. So for me, I was thinking about it as like, okay, well, now you have this like IRL virtual reality sound like holodeck, basically. So how do you have a group, which you normally can't have with VR headsets, in the same space at the same time, experiencing an audio-driven VR experience? So down in the bottom left, you can see we're doing some facial projection mapping and our prototyping of it. That was pretty fun. We didn't actually end up using that in the final one because of too many projector logistics. It seems to be a recurring theme in my life. And then the bottom right is just some of the designs. The way that the system works is that you have like different sound objects. You can attach a ton of different sounds to like one of these sound objects. You can give it a shape, and then you can send it in different timings around the space. So like each one of those dots is like representing like a column, and then you have the different sounds moving through the space, like circling or whatever. And it ended up looking something like this. So we had 2 layers of the experience, and it was really telling the story of a blind old man who didn't know he was blind, trying to remember places where he had been through a child. And the child actually turns out to be his inner child, and that's kind of the reveal at the end of the piece. Spoiler alert, I guess. But the way you can kind of see it, we had 4 people positioned in this space with blindfolds. Each of them had a guide, and the guides would actually hand like different tactile objects or produce different phenomena. So in the beginning, the old man and the child are in an orange grove, so there's like a narrator speaking, and then you also have the ambisonic audio of an orange grove, like a forest that you're in. So you feel like you're in a forest, you're blindfolded. These people don't get to see the space at all beforehand. We take them in blindfolded, and then we see them, and the guide would hand them an orange, and actually the voices of the characters would say, yeah, you can eat it. And then they could bite into it and experience that. And then they're actually guided around the room. And as they're guided around the room, the time and space and story changes. So they're taken 2 different times throughout the whole person's life. And And then, you know, they're seated back down again, and there's like elements where it rains and different things like that. So it was really about playing with the sound and the tactile elements, and also playing with the duality of audiences, because the audience who's in the middle can actually see the blindfolded being led around the room, and that's almost a dance performance in itself. And then they also see projections that are relative to the narrative as well. So they're getting a totally different audio-visual experience, while the blindfolded are getting a totally different audio and tactile experience. And again, gratitude is key. So yeah, thank you to Lori and Etche and Karina and Anya and the School of Machines for that one. That was cool. I put Dylan's face again because I just wanted it to be funny. Yeah, this is also important for being a successful grown-up kid, to be gracious to people. Yeah, but when I was working on that project, I really started to wonder, and it was even before I got to the space there, I started to really wonder what it's like to be blind, and why modern culture is so strictly visual in many ways. What that led to was this project called Infinite Observer. And this project, it came about really with that thought in mind, like what is it like to be blind? How could you make a VR experience for someone who's blind or visually impaired? And it just so happened I was becoming a part of the Oculus Launchpad program at the same time, and went there for like the boot camp for a weekend, and you know, sort of test drove the idea, talking to people about it, and everybody was like, whoa, that sounds really interesting. And so I started to work on this, and the first thing that I did was I said very humbly on Facebook, okay, does anyone know, I'm not trying to be rude, any blind people who might want to test a VR experience? And immediately, someone who I had been working with spatial audio stuff said, hey man, I built a blind VR video game 2 years ago, and I have 2 years of interviews with people who have played it. And then another friend said, you need to get in touch with my buddies in the Netherlands. They've built a immersive dark space that is a multi-room experience for sighted people to remove their sense of sight. So, next thing I did was I Skyped with a couple in the Netherlands. I actually went there and lived for a week with Yanni and Tina and their amazing dogs. And I really kind of deep dove into what life is like without sight, and how that's perceived. I went through their experiences, really, really transformative, really amazing to see that something that was built in the 90s is basically using the same methodologies as what we use in VR, but in IRL space, or real life physical space. And so they're using like spatial audio techniques by using mono speakers that are like buried underground or like put up in rafters. And Yanni literally built this entire space himself. He built multi-rooms in there, built an entire bar that you can go and sit down and order a drink without your sight. Like you have as a walking stick to guide you through everything. And they really created a really interesting experience. And as we were sitting and talking, I also wanted to share with them, you know, the state of VR today. So I brought an Oculus Rift there, and I brought a Oculus Go there, and we had some testing of like different binaural experiences, different ambisonic experiences, even there's like immersive audio books that we tried out, and then also VR experiences. And what we found out about VR is that, man, there are like some serious issues with the UX in VR for the blind or visually impaired, and really for accessibility in general. So that's now becoming a bigger part of my research right now, is understanding how we can create standards for accessibility in VR and make things so that you don't have to necessarily be able to see to get past the main menus so that you can actually experience this, even if the entire experience is like mostly audio driven. A lot of times it's a gaze-based menu, which like what does a gaze-based menu mean to someone who can't contextualize where something is in the space around them based on solely visuals. So a lot of the common UX design right now, because of the innovation which led to VR being so popular, which was like putting these two screens right next to each other and it gives a solution. But it also led to a lot of innovation on the sound and a lot of attention to the tactile side as well. So the hope, like high vision for the project, is to create a conversation and to really push the industry in the direction of making things more accessible and doing that. On the narrative side, well, first I'll introduce the team. Yanni and Tina in the Netherlands, who are like really great advisors. Kedar Shachidar, he was the friend who actually had mentioned working on a previous VR project, and he actually works at Magic Leap and does a lot of their spatial audio stuff. And then Chris Pilcher, who I think you guys heard from in this class, who's just an amazing VR artist and thinker, and it's been like such a blessing to work with. And then I put Oculus as a part of the team, because hopefully they'll be helping fund the project. So on the narrative side, I was with Yanni and Tina in the Netherlands. These ideas were coming to me about like breaking down sort of the dominant visual culture and working on really like, okay, if there's an underground ring of hackers who know all these distinct things about vibrational technologies, or how to like hack radio systems and disrupt, or how to actually disrupt like what your Twitter feed says as you're reading it in real time through different sound methodologies, because sound can break down through the visual spectrum. How cool would it be if there was this group of underground hackers who were doing this? And I presented the idea to Yanni and Tina, and they were like, hell yeah, man, like, do that. Like, that's the voice that we've wanted to have, but we haven't had. And I think that it kind of echoes the purpose of the project as well. So it's been really fun kind of story building that and building out that side of it as well. And I actually have been invited to speak at a really big hacker gathering at the end of the year in Germany at the Chaos Computer Club, which will be pretty fun. So yeah, there's a video finally. So this is the part where I think someone has to like switch it over to
Okay.
the video.
Alright. I'm gonna do it.
Cool.
Infinite and server, correct?
Yeah.
Our members usually find us, track us through the others, but you're different. You're something special. Have the freaker, who's every gun, I know. You're wondering why we're all here. So let me break it down for you. We have never had a voice. We're always just an afterthought. And they think we are powerless. And until now, we believe them. But look, that's not a problem. That is our advantage. They've made us invisible, so they'll never see us coming. We'll start with the US by finding their single point of failure. We can break down the greater infrastructure. Look, the US controls the entertainment market. If we are able to infiltrate the system and corrupt it without detection, and insert our beacons, we can start to find others like us and accelerate our bigger initiatives across the world.
So that's our super top secret, don't record it please, video for the prototype that we've been sending around to like Sundance and some other festivals to hopefully get the work like more widespread. So you just saw a super sneak preview of that. It's gonna change a lot, but just wanted to share some of that. And that's like pretty much it for me. So this is how you get in touch. There's stuff on there. Yeah, I'm very open to questions. I do want to encourage like anyone who's doing like a VR creation and is from like an underrepresented community to apply for the Oculus Launchpad program, because it is like a really good platform for accessing a huge network. And it doesn't cost anything to be a part of. It's just like an open application. Yeah, and there's lots of great resources out there. I'm happy to like share with people. You know, you can literally just ask me, and I'm an open book. I'm a very like open source hearted person, so like I will share all my secrets.
Awesome. Well, first, let's thank him. And if you have questions, come up so he can, or let me switch, oh yeah, well I guess we're going to switch to your face, yeah. Yeah, come up so he can see you, because I can't bring it to you because I'm tethered here. Anybody have questions? Yes, you have a question.
Hi.
Hi.
That was awesome, by the way.
Yes.
Okay, so you were saying that you think in about 10 years, like, cell phones are going to be obsolete. Do you think that's because, like, you were saying that the mind and tech are kind of going to, like, merge? Do you think that the cell phone will be, like, an unneeded bridge between them?
Yeah, definitely. I think that a lot of the things that we have become accustomed to, like even like typing on a keyboard, which as like an original fresh human baby, we like think is the weirdest thing ever. But now like even when we're in VR, we're like, shoot, I really wish I had a keyboard so I could type faster, you know? We're gonna sort of like see ourselves like learning again how to be more human and like aligning that with the innovations in technology. So like if you imagine like augmented reality in your everyday life, replacing all of your cell phone usage and your ability to like interact with whatever sort of like customized interface that you want, that really fits you personally, and interact with like the mind of computation in that way. Why would you ever want to, you know, put yourself in like a fail pose all day long, bend over in front of a computer, you know, constrict your muscles in weird ways when you could be like free and open and like physically more in a natural state while interacting with computers. I don't know, I see everything kind of going in that direction.
I like that direction. Thank you.
Yeah, cool. Other questions? Come on, I know y'all are. Okay, we got another. Okay, sure.
Hey, how's it going?
Hey.
I'm Monroe, and I've been trying to get into VR design just after hearing all these talks. It sounds like I should have been, you know, doing VR yesterday. So like, I have been trying to break into it, and I'm kind of experienced with After Effects and stuff like that, but I updated After Effects to 2019, and then I opened it up and tried to get the VR software running, and it said I need a GPU accelerator now. So I'm like trying to get into that, and then trying to figure out, you know, how to make use of my old Mac and like still be able to do VR. But I want to know, like, is it even possible to like design VR on an old Mac now, or am I going to be best off just to like go ahead and build a PC or something and like get started on Unity? Or I just don't really know like where to get started from this point.
Yeah, so really good question, really relevant question. This is a question I asked myself yesterday because I traveled with only my MacBook. And a lot of like make-a-thon things talking about VR and stuff. So I'm gonna try to figure that out as well. But I think that what you can do on a Mac is you can definitely prototype in Unity and create the sort of game environment that you want in 3D. And have it so as like a desktop version of that, and then you can take that to a VR-ready computer and then drop in like the couple of like VR like plugins or components as they call them in Unity. And then that brings in that functionality almost immediately. So it's basically like with the VR components in Unity, it's basically adding like a camera. So if you think about, if you're making it on your Mac and you're thinking about this camera, and if it's like a first-person camera that you're building, that would translate very easily to the way that you would want it in VR. And then you could basically like disable that camera and then add in like a player item into the Unity project and then test with that and then see. And it may just be a few different things you have to tweak, and it may end up being, you know, easy in some cases, and other cases there may be a little bit more tinkering. But yeah, I think coming from like a background like After Effects, there's a little bit more of like a coding influence on Unity.
And I'm wondering, is it
you
when
may
I'm trying
actually
to get started there? Like, do I need to go ahead and start coding? Because like, I feel like I've been like
no.
waiting for like a more creative standpoint to like be able to. I want to be able to like create within VR too. So I'm like trying to figure out if I need to just buy a Vive and then start using, you know, Tilt Brush or whatever program to start creating there. But like, I don't want to be limited by the technology that I have, but it's starting to feel like I'm limited right now. But
Yeah, so there's I would say there's a few options there. I wouldn't feel limited by the creativity side of it. I would say that like you can start prototyping and things like that already with the tools that you have, and with Oculus's Quest that they're coming out with next year, that's like, I think it's gonna be $399 and completely standalone, so you don't need a computer, and that they already have Tilt Brush for that. So that kind of like works right in. But if you want to do like super heavy lifting, you can ask me, like email me for like specs on building a cheap VR PC, like a desktop, and I can send you some good recommendations on that. It's gonna be more than that headset, but it may be like better in the long run in that sense. And then yeah, also because you're from the After Effects camp, you might like Unreal better than Unity.
okay.
Unreal feels a little bit more natural from an artist standpoint.
I'll check that out.
Like everything's kind of more compartmentalized, and there's a lot of like ready to drop in like assets or whatever. Like so you can grab like a character or like a first person character and just drag it into the scene. And if you've ever used the 3D like software before, you know like that there's like this scene and you like rotate it and all that stuff. Then it's I would say it's a lower learning curve on that side. I think the reason why most people choose Unity is because it's a lot easier to code in. So for like more complex programs where you're just like one person, people prefer Unity. But Unreal, from an artist standpoint, I feel like is a more natural step. So yeah, test them both and just kind of see what you like. Since they're both free, that's the amazing thing. It's like all the gaming stuff is free. So there's no reason not to just like try and take a stab at it.
Good, cool. Thank you so much.
Yeah, for sure.
Any other questions? Yeah, come on, Foster.
Hey, so as someone who's creating music in this environment, do you feel like you're sort of applying music to this environment, or to what extent do you feel like you're involved with, you know, writing the principles of a new music theory?
Oh man, that last word just like totally changed the question for me. Just music theory. I think that there's definitely a new paradigm happening, especially on the interface front. I've been talking with some, I can't say who yet, but I've been talking with some electronic, like musical instrument producers who want to start using VR as like a step inside of our machine, and see what it feels like to control it from like the inside. And I think that there's some aspect of freedom to not having to, again, it kind of echoes back to the first question, not having to use like a mouse and a keyboard, but then having the freedom to like walk around in a space and like, oh, I can like feel that button when I push it, but also I can duplicate something which I can't do in the physical world. And then I think in terms of like how much I'm a part of it, I think that a lot of I'm like right at this point right now where like I'm really considering because Soundstage is now open source. I'm really considering taking Soundstage and starting to work on that as a real project and developing that and like possibly like doing the grad school route and like making that my research. But at the same time, I think a lot of people in the VR music space are like looking more for artists who are serious about using it and wanting to lean in on those creative voices to like test things out and see what works and see what doesn't. So that's why I'm like still kind of like teetering on that edge. Did that answer the question?
Sure, kind of.
Because the music,
What kind of opportunities are there for like integrating acoustic instruments?
So that's something that hasn't been done as much. There's not a lot of these applications that are taking audio in yet, which is a big issue or opportunity, whichever way you want to look at it. And I think that that is really interesting. I've played with more acoustic instruments, like in, you know, small groups. Like I've played with, you know, I guess not acoustic because it's an electric guitar, but still a guitar. And so I've played along with people in that sense, but I think that there is a very, very interesting application of augmented reality for learning of instruments, where, you know, you could imagine having on, you know, Magic Leap or something like that and looking down at a guitar while you're learning it and seeing the fingers and the hand positionings in certain ways to where like you just like match that shape with your hand versus, you know, having to go to class and even being able for like really skilled guitarists to actually like real time, you know, volumetrically like capture their movements and then save that as an augmented reality file, which then their students could use in a place across the world. You know, you can see these sorts of new like possibilities on that sense too. So I think there's a lot of opportunity. I haven't thought as much on the acoustic side. Are you a musician?
Yeah.
What do you play?
No, I play keyboards and string instruments.
Okay, cool. Yeah, I mean, with keyboards, there's obviously like there's some work that needs to be done. Just because VR is so computationally intensive right now, there's some work that needs to be done on the tactile interfaces that we're using to make keyboarding in VR feel like real. And then with string instruments, X's is kind of interesting because they're experimenting with the string interface a bit. So if you get a chance, you might want to try Exa. And if y'all's lab doesn't have a key, I can write to the developer for you and get that if y'all need it. But yeah, he's experimented with like some like bowing techniques and some different interface stuff. I think everybody who's on the music production side and are creating these VR apps are definitely looking at interface as a big thing, but they all have very different approaches. So it's kind of interesting to try them all and see like what kind of aligns with you, and if you want to go in that direction. I think still in these early days there are like a lot of hoops to jump through in terms of like getting used to this approach. For me, it was really easy because Soundstage basically represents all the electronic music instruments that I've used in the past. And it's like, oh, this is a drum machine, this is my bread and butter. Oh, this is like, you know, patching stuff that's like really fun for me. But yeah, coming from a string background and something that's so like tactile in that sense and takes so much like minute like control Um, you know, those are like things that are going to come with, I think, the development of technology too.
Yeah.
Yeah. In terms of music theory though, because that was like a whole nother thing at the end that just slipped in. I'm not sure that it's changed too much. I think that every time we get new tools, something about the music that's being produced does change. Like, you know, you see like the 808 comes in, all of a sudden the genre is formed. You know, sampling devices become easier. Another genre is formed. But the theory around it is something that I think is always going to be between a few different camps, and there's always going to be traditional music theory that's going to still measure these new creations by like, okay, what key, what mode, you know, et cetera, is that in? And then you have the other people who are like, okay, well, timbrely, but maybe with the spatial stuff, we may see something new.
Maybe more
That's
like
actually,
a
that's
blending of
actually,
like traditional, maybe like traditional orchestration and arrangement theory with like more engineering practices.
yeah, and it'll be interesting to see how people measure the spatial quality of music, because there's something that I don't think that we've had like a like super saturated like community of musicians working on yet, even today.
Yeah.
So maybe once like it's like popular music is now like spatially done, we'll find new ways to measure, you know, we'll talk about it in whatever musical theories that exist. Yeah, so that's a good question. Thank you.
So, hey Daniel, do you think, do you have a video that I've seen you perform a couple of times?
Yeah.
I've explained it to these guys, but I was
Yeah.
wondering if there was a video that we could show. We
Yeah.
would let you go because you're awesome and your time is, I know, very valuable, but would love to show because it's 2 now. I mean, if you want to stay, that's great, but I would love to just hop on a video and show your performance.
Okay, I'll pull that up real quick.
Like, yeah, if you just send me a video, and that would be great. And the other thing I just wanted to let you all know is, while he's pulling that up, he is at, so those of you who've taken my class and know that I do design thinking and talk a lot about IDEO and human-centered design. So he's at some sort of secret make-a-thon in Boston, which I assume they invited you to come to, right, Daniel?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And so, but he's making something and he doesn't even know what it is. It's like secret. And like, so what's going to happen?
Yeah, so it's kind of focused on like prototyping future societies, and so there's a few different themes they've come up with, but they don't say anything more beyond that. So like, yeah, we're interested in possibly blockchain, possibly XR, and that's it. And we're gonna do this make-a-thon thing, and we're not gonna tell you anything else. You just come, and this is gonna be the ideal way. And, I'm expecting a lot of like design-heavy sort of like hackathon sort of environment, and it's 1 day, so.
Well, I just wanted to let you all know. So did they bring you there to do this, or?
Yeah. So they like
See, it's
they
real.
help me pay for the flight and stuff like that.
I just wanted the students to know that that's a real thing, and that the stuff that they're learning actually, like, people get paid to do, to be thoughtful and artistic and future forward and technical and artists together, and with a lot of work.
Yeah, definitely. If anyone is interested in taking like a super creative path, whether it's like freelancing full time or like going the artist way, like where you're like strictly an artist, like please reach out to me. I have like way too many resources that I've compiled, and I'd be happy to share them with people. Like I'm like sitting there applying to like 2-3 proposals a week probably. It's just like part of my grind. And that's a lot apparently. I didn't know. And I'm happy to like share where I find opportunities and things like that, because it's something I never knew. Like literally, I think I graduated Georgia Tech 2011, and it was just like 2 years ago that I was like, whoa, artist in residencies are a thing. You can just go somewhere and like they pay for your like housing and food, and like you just make art. What is that? So yeah, there's resources out there, and it's a weird community to navigate. And it's kind of like less structured than the like startup world, which is maybe more easy to understand. But if you have questions about the startup world, I did work at Tech Square Labs and like help manage that space. So I have some knowledge in that area too. Like seriously, I'm an open book. If people email me, I answer.
Awesome. Well, we're gonna thank you and let you go, then we're gonna watch your video. Does that sound good?
Yeah.
Awesome.
Actually, I want to watch you watch the video.
Oh,
So I
okay,
can
cool.
feel
Well,
it
then,
off.
great. Okay, well, we're gonna thank you and then watch your video. Where do I go? Oh, here.
I need to pause for a moment and think about this one basic question.
So would you let us know next time you're in Atlanta performing?
Definitely. I will. It might be in December. We'll see.
Oh, wow, okay.
I'm trying to get back sooner than later.
Okay.
Yeah, and the performances have changed. It's come a long way since then. So, lots of new stuff. It's very hard to document myself because I'm in a headset. And video people are super flaky most of the time.
Yeah, no, it's hard. It's hard when anything changes up. It's very true. When it's not traditional. Yeah. Wow. Well, that was super great. Thank you so much. And we'll have an article and the video up, by December. By the time you get here to perform.
Cool.
All
Yeah,
right.
thank you for sitting and listening to me.
Yeah. Let us know what you make in the hackathon. Or you make it.
Yeah, I will.
Okay. All right. Cool. Thank you.
Yeah.